Our story is one of reimagining. Reimagining who you can be, what you can achieve, and how CIMA can support you. Founded in the UK in 1919, with the belief that an accountant's impact goes beyond the balance sheet, CIMA joined forces with the AICPA in the US to form the Association of International Certified Professional Accountants. Today, we serve members and students in 179 countries and territories. Established in Sri Lanka in 1965, our qualification has helped finance professionals shape local businesses and find international opportunities. Our purpose is to create better futures by powering trust, opportunity, and prosperity for our members, students, the profession, businesses, and economies. We do this by organizing events that upskill our members, by introducing specialized pathways for experienced finance professionals to enter the qualification at the right level, and by raising the interest of future finance professionals. As technology and digital platforms disrupt businesses, we are reimagining what the profession can be. We've updated our syllabus to meet the expectation of employers, ensuring CIMA qualified professionals have the skills to make an impact from day one. Our continuous professional development assets, like the Digital Mindset Pack, introduce you to the skill sets and mindset needed to make technology an ally in the workplace of tomorrow. By reimagining and delivering the skills that create value for businesses, we are building an ecosystem of progress and placing you right at its center. Reimagine your career. Contact CIMA Sri Lanka.
Good evening, everyone. Welcome to Rejig, Shaping Brand Conversations, brought to you by FCBKL.LK and CIMA. Rejig is a forum where we will discuss the new and evolving shape that brand development is taking. New consumer needs and new media behaviors are reshaping the interactions between brands and their final users. Rejig will shed light on this evolving tapestry of brand building and give fresh perspectives on how to apply this emerging new knowledge to add value to brands and to the lives of final consumers. To formally commence today's forum, let me invite Ms. Thamali Aberatne, Lead Specialist, New Business Development and Employee Relations at CIMA Sri Lanka.
Good evening. Distinguished invitees from our respected corporates, team members from FCBKL.LK and CIMA, ladies and gentlemen. On behalf of CIMA Sri Lanka, I am delighted to welcome you today to Rejig, a forum to discuss the new and evolving shape the brand development is taking. In a world that is changing much faster than ever before, we believe in supporting growth in a sustainable manner. 2021 was a year of great progress and achievement for CIMA globally. Along with AICPA, which is the association that was created combining the strengths of CIMA and American Institute of Certified Public Accountants. The association has been at the forefront of developing people and helping organizations succeed in many ways. Today's event is brought to you by FCBKL.LK in collaboration with CIMA with the same purpose in mind. The lineup of today's program consists of Mr. Santosh Menon and Ms. Chanithi presentation on shaping brand conversations, a Q&A session on the presentation, followed by a brief introduction to CIMA Fast Track Routes for corporate professionals, and finally concluding with refreshments. Given the external environmental challenges that we are all currently facing, we are truly grateful for all the participants who made the effort to attend this event today. We are confident that your time spent here this evening will be rewarding and fulfilling. We hope you enjoy the event. Thank you.
Thank you, Thamali. And now we move on to the highlight of the evening, Chanithi and Santosh Menon's presentation on brand purpose. Chanithi is a passionate and creative individual with over 15 years in the Marcom industry, handling a wide range of brands across categories in Sri Lanka and Mauritius. She currently leads the planning team at FCBKL.LK. Her current portfolio includes HMB Cards, Lanka Soy, Sarah, Parachute Coconut Oil, and Fairfirst Insurance. She switched from account management to account planning 7 years ago, and she has not once looked back. Her expertise is in creating holistic marketing communication strategies. She believes that a good marketing strategy needs to tell the bigger story of what makes the brand human. And the key to telling powerful brand stories is by developing an emotional resonance with your audience. She spends her spare time making up bedtime stories for her 4-year-old son and writing witty commentary on current events on her social media. Santosh Menon is a marketing communication specialist with over 20 years' experience managing and building brands in India, Mauritius, Indonesia, and Sri Lanka. Some of the brands he has actively helped shape include Ratti, New Dale, and HMB credit cards. In his 15-year tenure in Sri Lanka, he is responsible for nurturing and developing many such household brands. He is an active member in the corporate industry, being a member of the International Chamber of Commerce, Ceylon Chamber of Commerce, and the Indian CEO Forum. Recently, he was in the judging panel of the Most Admired Company of Sri Lanka Awards, organized jointly by CIMA and ICC. And he was a judge at the Top 50 Career Women Awards organized by Women in Management Sri Lanka. As an entrepreneur in advertising, he is also a regular columnist on marketing communications for Daily Financial Times. As a professional turned businessman, he offers insights on both aspects, being an employer as well as employee. He started his career in Mumbai in Leo Burnett Advertising and was with JWT and then FCB, all global advertising companies. He set up BBDO Lanka in Sri Lanka in 2011 and subsequently KL.LK, of which he is the chairman and CEO. As someone who boasts a professional career in managing businesses, both as professional and as a businessman across many global operations, Santosh regularly does presentations to share his insights. His most recent were on personal branding for women in management and as a keynote speaker at the NSBM convocation. He is uniquely poised to add value to this forum with his insights. Ladies and gentlemen, a round of applause to welcome Chanithi Gunasekara and Santosh Menon.
It's fantastic to have all of you here today. Thank you, like Tamali and Kish said, thank you for making the effort to come in here today. So, welcome to the first edition of Rejig Shaping Brand Conversations. And actually, the whole conversation is going to be about brands today. So why are brands important? Brands are exceedingly important because they create loyalty. And that's a very, very important component when it comes to your brands and your products. Because when you have loyal customers, they give you more value, they buy your products more regularly, they stay with you through your ups and downs, and that has a direct implication on your sales, that has a direct implication on your market share, that has a direct implication on your profitability. Therefore, brands are important because you have loyal customers, and that's at the core of the conversation today. But more importantly, how can brands become purposeful? And that's today's conversation, really. So what is brand purpose? So brand purpose is a brand's promise to actively pursue change in the wider world. How brands choose to purpose that pledge is up to them. That call for change needs to be meaningful and relevant to a chosen target audience and vitally needs to be backed up by doing. It's an action-oriented strategy that can only be achieved and have true credibility when it creates real change that people value. And I think as we move forward in the conversation today, you will get clarity on what this means. Why is it needed? It's needed because if you take a look at this loyal customer and the consumer for your brand that we're talking about has actually been stopping to buy products that they perceive are unethical. In fact, I think there's a global study which says that 91% of the consumers were likely to switch to a brand that supports a good cause. So in that context, if loyalty is key to survival of brands, then brand purpose becomes key, because otherwise your consumer is going to move away to another brand that actually has purpose. Now, let me tell you, and while we're having this conversation, this is important to have a context. I'm not here to sell you brand purpose. I'm actually here to explore brand purpose. And I really want to explore it in terms of the positives and negatives, which is why I have Chanithi here today, who's going to contradict everything I'm going to say. And that's how we're going to make this conversation meaningful and interesting, because while I might advocate it, Chanithi is going to say no. And I think Chanithi is going to present viewpoints which are contradictory, so that you can actually, during this conversation, immerse into the merits and demerits of brand purpose. And this is important for us to understand. So I'm going to be the advocate. She's going to be the naysayer. And that's how we're going to have this conversation today. And hopefully at the end of this 45, 50-minute conversation, you would have actually understood the merits and demerits of this concept of brand purpose and how it's going to help brands.
Yeah, so as my first point, if you take brands like Amazon or Uber, they get a lot of bad press, especially about how they treat their employees. But then those brands continue to grow year on year. So is brand purpose really necessary then?
Yes, I think it really does work, Channa. So let's explain and let's get into the discussion of how it works. Yeah, and the reason it works is because the consumer is changing, and digital has really become an important element in all our conversations. And let's explain that, and let's get into a detailed discussion on how that's really impacting our world. So digital has changed the path to purchase. And let me explain this in a very direct way. About 3 months ago, I purchased a television set. It took me 45 minutes to go from saying I want to buy a television set to actually clicking on my laptop and making that purchase. My mom, who was sitting behind me, watched all of this and narrated a very interesting incident. She said, you know what? The first ever television set we bought when you were a kid was when your dad and I decided we needed to buy a television set. It took us 20 days to decide which one to buy. And I said, why did that happen? She said, well, there was a whole process to go through. We needed to make an evaluation. We went to a shop. We looked at all the products that was there. We actually wrote down all the costs. We spoke to our friends who had done television purchases before. That process took 15 days. And today, that entire purchase happened in 45 minutes. 1 day later, I had the television set at my home after I clicked on the button saying, buy. Very important. The path to purchase for a consumer has changed, and digital has changed it dramatically. And that's a very important consideration. So how does it link up with brand purpose? I'll show you. Because digital has also changed the way in which consumers interact with brands. So I asked my mom, right, how did you know which brands to buy? How did the thought of which brands to select come to your consideration set? She said, you know what, we had press, we had television, so we would look at the ads, and those were the brands which we would remember. In today's world, it's completely different, because what happens is brands communicate directly with consumers, and consumers actually have a direct conversation with brands. In the past, it was a one-way conversation. Now it's a two-way conversation, because a brand and the consumer are actually constantly interacting at all points in time. So what is important to understand in the context of purchase is, if I'm going to go out there and buy a brand, and when I go online, I actually can have a full sense of not only what the brands have to offer me in terms of price points, but I can also see post-experience conversations happening online. So there might be somebody who says, I bought this brand, the price point was good, but you know what? Actually, I've had all of these issues. So the entire experience from the time I decide to buy to post-purchase is all available online for consumers. And that is a big, big change, because no longer do I have to rely on my own personal experience, but I can actually check it out online at the time of before making the purchase. The big change, of course, is the way in which Gen Z and millennials have changed the way they make decisions. There's Avrudu here, which is a big festival. in India, we have Diwali. And one of the main components of our festivals has been firecrackers. And I remember when we were kids, the more firecrackers there were and the more noise it made, the more exciting it was. Guess what? That's changing. And I'm sure all of you are noticing the amount of firecrackers happening in the festivals is reduced. You know why? Because the Gen Z and millennials are conscious that firecrackers are polluting elements, are aware of things that actually make a difference to the world. Climate change is a big discussion point. Employee treatment is a big discussion point. The Gen Z and the millennials are actually shaping conversations, in terms of how brands respond in the marketplace and how ethical they are and how compliant they are to climate change issues as never before. And that's putting an amazing amount of pressure on brands to define its own purpose. You know why? Because these guys are ruthless. They either reward or punish. We call it boycott or boycott. Because when they know that you're doing a great job in terms of addressing some of the larger issues in the world, they might buy into you. And if you're not, you're going to be boycotted. So it's absolutely clear what these guys do. And this is important. Therefore, brands have to define purpose clearly. So therefore, what am I saying? In today's context, it's not enough to just be bigger, better, faster, which is what it was earlier. When I bought a product, is it bigger? Is it better? Is it providing me value? If it was, fantastic, I'm buying into it. But in today's context, it's not enough to be bigger, better, faster, or cheaper. Today's brands need to do right by the customer, their employees, and community, and align their brand values to the personal values that the Gen Z and millennials, prefer. And this is very, very, very important. Right, Chana?
I mean, I hear you, Santosh, but when I go into a coffee shop, let's say Coffee Bean, I can't be the only one, who goes there for the coffee experience. I'm not too bothered whether, they're saving the planet or not.
Well, I mean, I do think it's important to be authentic, relevant, and real. Okay? So now, Chana, now that we've had this conversation, right, and we've had this debate and you're going to be a naysayer, why don't you tell them what needs to be done to write brand purpose properly? And we'll get into that conversation. Yeah. We'll do that soon. Yeah. But before we do that, I want to ask you guys, what's the brand and what's the tagline? Just do it. Yeah, I mean, it's just, everybody says that. If you really look at Nike as a brand, and the reason I want to talk about Nike is because Nike has done a great job in actually addressing the needs of the Gen Z and millennials in terms of creating a purposeful statement. If you really looked at what Nike used to do earlier, it used to be about bringing inspiration and innovation to every athlete in the world. And this was the brand purpose statement for Nike global brand. But post them recrafting to address the new generation, this is the term, this is the new statement, which is, if you have a body, you're an athlete. And let me show you the commercial.
Believers fail to understand is that calling sacrificing everything. When they talk about the greatest team in the history of the sport, make sure it's your team. If you have only one hand, Don't just watch football, play it at the highest level. And if you're a girl from Compton, don't just become a tennis player. Become the greatest athlete ever. Yeah, that's more like it. So don't ask if your dreams are crazy. Ask if they're crazy enough.
It's a very subtle transition from appealing and making a point of view about athletes to connecting it back into your lives and asking you, if your dreams are crazy, you need to ask yourself, are they crazy enough? And I think that's a very powerful statement that brand Nike made. Don't you think so, Channa?
Yeah, but then there are so many times when brands got it wrong with brand purpose.
Yep.
I mean, classic case, MasterCard. During World Cup 2018, they did this Goals for Change, where they committed to feeding 10,000 children based on how Neymar and Messi will score. What do you think will happen? People were outraged. I mean, how can a corporate who actually has the means to feed the hunger base it on a chance of probability of Messi or Neymar scoring? So that really backfired on them. Let me show you the film they did for it. You have the means to do it.
I agree. I mean, at the end of the day, I think, when you approach your own personal brand, the brands that you work on, you got to really think about whether you're doing CSR or whether you are actually doing brand purpose work. And I think that's an important conversation to have. And I think MasterCard is an example of something that didn't work because people saw this as being opportunistic and they felt anyway the brand should be doing good work for poor people, rather than linking it up and trying to make a big deal out of a connection to a sport or a goal. And I think this is an important learning. Definitely as we move on in the conversation about brand purpose, you need to know also and look at examples of things, what not to do. And this is a good example. I would agree, Channa.
Yeah,
I agree to your point.
Yeah, thank you. There's also Pepsi.
Yep.
When they did the Live for Now campaign with Kendall Jenner. And there was backlash at them because they used something as important as Black Lives Matters and made it, so trivialistic with this campaign.
So
and
yeah,
really
we'll show you the commercial, and it's very interesting, right? I mean, it's a good point.
remove it in less than 48 hours.
And why did that happen? I think right now there's a political situation going on in Sri Lanka. And I'm sure many companies are thinking, should we do something? Should we do something? Should we keep quiet? Fact is, don't do it if it doesn't make sense in a context of something that you're specifically doing. And that's the short and clear answer. Because if you're going to use politics as a method to create an opportunistic positivity for your brand, it is bound to backfire. Politics is something that normally I would say brands shouldn't touch. And that's my point of view. There could be different points of views on this. So, how does a brand define a purpose? Go ahead, Chana.
Yeah. So, the brand purpose, it's all about the why. So Simon Sinek explains this beautifully, that people don't buy what you do, meaning the products or services, but they buy into why you do it. And he explains this through this concept called the golden circle. So the golden circle, the outermost ring, that is the what. So that is what almost all of us know what our companies do. We know what our products and services which we market are. But in the second ring, the middle ring, that's the how. So this is about how we're differentiated. So some companies will know this, how their brands are better than the competitors, what makes them special. But then right at the core, at the center, is the why, which is what only a very few companies know. And why is not about making money, because that's the result of your business process, but the why is about the causes and the beliefs that the brand has, that the brand values. And it is the very reason for why that organization exists. I think it'll be better if I can explain it to you using a couple of brands that we are more familiar with. Apple, right? So we all know Apple is into making great computers, phones, all these gadgets for us. And they differentiate it by making them very simple to use, aesthetically designed. There's a clear difference between Apple and another device, right? But if you really look into the why as to how they define their purpose, what they say is it's to empower creative exploration and self-expression. And what you'll find out is all these Apple products, which are named iPhone, iPad, that I is for the individual. So it's the individualistic expression of creativity that they're talking about. Let's look at another example of Tesla. So we all know Tesla's into making these great electric vehicles. And they're differentiating it by accelerating into the transition of sustainable energy and electrical vehicles. But how do they define their purpose? How do they see it? They see it as an organization who wants to shape the future of energy and transport. That is their purpose. That's what drives them to making products like this. Yeah. So, in fact, interestingly, I know Santosh was talking about how the consumer gets motivated by purpose. But what Elon Musk says is, yes, as much as your consumer is engaged and they want to buy into that brand, so do your employees, your key employees. Because as employees working for a company, putting in those long hours, it's tough. But if you are working for a cause, for something bigger, like a purpose, then you're inspired to do more. It's easy to put in those hours. Yeah. So the goal of these brands, it's not to do business with everyone who needs your phone or who needs your car. It's not about people who needs the product. But the goal is to do business with people, with consumers who actually connect with you with the same beliefs and same values. So there are many ways to do purpose. We've picked a few examples to share with you. Santosh, you can start.
Okay, so this is a brand all of us know. It's Lifebuoy, right? And I want to show you what I still feel. Personally, I get really moved by this campaign for a couple of reasons, right? Let me ask you guys, what was the first thing that scientists and doctors told you to do once the pandemic hit to stay safe, besides wearing a mask? Keep mask aside.
Wash hands.
Wash your hands. And you know what? This brand has actually been talking about washing your hands for hygiene for the last 7 years. And they made the most capital about from that particular statement that came out. And I want to show you how they did it. It's incredible, right? Because if you really look at a soap, what does a soap do? It cleans your hands and keeps it safe. But the way in which Lifebuoy connected that into a larger space related to hygiene and then made it into something much larger in terms of a purpose statement is something that I think all of us can learn from. And let me show you a film which actually explains that beautifully.
பொழுதொரு வண்ணம் என் மகன் வளருகிறான் உள்ளங்களிலே இன்பம் பெருகிட மனதில் நிறைகின்றான் மனதில் நிறைகின்றான் தாயும் தந்தையும் விரும்புவதெல்லாம் ஒன்னேதானுங்க ஐயா ஒன்னேதானுங்க கண்ணுக்கு கண்ணான தான் பெத்த பிள்ளை துள்ளி விளையாடியே மனதை மகிழச் செய்யணுங்க மகிழச் செய்யணுங்க மகிழச் செய்யணுங்க தெய்வம் தந்த செல்வமையா நான் பெற்ற செல்வமையா ஆரோக்கியமும் அறிவும் பெற்று வளர்ந்துட்டானையா மனம் மகிழ்ந்தோமையா நாமே மனம் மகிழ்ந்தோமையா இந்த மகிழ்ச்சியின் வேதனை எதுவும் மறந்திடும் ஐயா ஐயா நாளொரு மேனியும் பொழுதொரு வண்ணம் என் மகன் வளருகிறான் உள்ளங்களிலே இன்பம் பெருகிட மனதில் நிறைகின்றான் மனதில் நிறைகின்றான்
मेरा बच्चा 5 साल का हो गया।
इतना सब 5 साल में कौन सी बड़ी बात है?
बड़ी बात है मैडम, ये गुंडापा का पहला बच्चा है जो 5 साल की उम्र तक पहुंचा है।
क्या?
I mean, I personally still get goosebumps when I see this commercial, and I think primarily because, Lifebuoy actually has taken this whole concept of washing of hands for hygiene and connected it and taken it to a village and made a commitment of actually saying, we are going to help this village have kids which reach the age of 5. And suddenly the brand has created through an action and committed to a purpose which is much larger than just hygiene. And that's a great example of a brand delivering on purpose in a very sincere, meaningful way and bringing about change which actually makes significant difference to common lives. And I think this is a great articulation of brand purpose. Okay, Chana, this is the next one, the one that actually talks about change in women's lives.
Yeah, thank you. So, why I like this case study particularly because it involves women, so it treats this very sensitively. So, whilst this is in India, I think it's largely true for this part of the world. See, when it comes to inequality, we feel that inequality is something based on our gender, that it's something that we face out of our homes, out of our comfort zones, when we go into office or when we go into public places. But inequality also happens in our own homes, right? When it comes to household chores, us as well as community believe that it's a woman's job to do all those things. So even in India, where this case is from, Ariel, they're a washing laundry powder. They found that most people believe these household chores are supposed to be done by women. And that is a narrative which they wanted to change. So what they did was, they did some interesting research and they found out that especially when it came to even something as basic as laundry, men took the easy way out and women ended up doing all the laundry. So this was to start a conversation about sharing household chores, right? And they started with laundry because obviously the brand is a laundry detergent. And what they did was they eventually came up with a campaign to sign a petition where they got men to sign up to show support that they will commit to sharing the load. We have a couple of films for you. We'll show the film that started the conversation, and there's one case study film which kind of explains how the digital conversation progressed. Yeah, Santosh.
Nana, ये देखो, shield, leg, helmet. Homework हो गया? मम्मी, ये देखो.
फिर दाग लगा दिया. पापा, ये लीजिए आपके घर जाने की टिकट. Hello, yeah, I'm just going to send you the email in 5 minutes. Yeah, give me 5 minutes. I'm working on the present.
मेरी छोटी सी गुड़िया कितनी बड़ी हो गई. घर घर खेलती थी, अब घर संभालती है, ऑफिस संभालती है. आई एम सो प्राउड एंड आई एम सो सॉरी. सॉरी कि ये सब तुम्हें अकेले करना पड़ता है. सॉरी कि जब तुम घर घर खेलती थी तो मैंने तुम्हें रोका नहीं. ये नहीं कहा कि ये सिर्फ तुम्हारा काम नहीं है, तुम्हारे हस्बैंड का भी है. पर कहता भी कैसे है.
और मेरी ग्रीन शर्ट धो देना.
मैंने भी तो कभी तुम्हारी मम्मी की हेल्प नहीं की, और तुमने जो देखा वही सीखा. तुम्हारे हस्बैंड ने भी बचपन में यही देखा होगा. घर घर खेलते वक्त वो टीवी देखने की या न्यूज़पेपर पढ़ने की एक्टिंग करता होगा, और तुम जैसी कोई छोटी सी लड़की चाय बनाने की एक्टिंग करती होगी. उसके डैड की तरफ से सॉरी, तुम्हारे डैड की तरफ से सॉरी, और हर उस डैड की तरफ से सॉरी जिसने कई कई सालों से एक गलत एग्जाम्पल सेट किया. पर अभी भी देर नहीं हुई. इस सॉरी के साथ मैं अपनी तरफ से एक छोटी सी कोशिश करूंगा कि घर के काम में मम्मी की हेल्प करूं. किचन का किंग ना बन पाऊं तो कम से कम लॉन्ड्री में तो हाथ बटाऊं. इतने साल एक गलत एग्जाम्पल सेट किया है, अब कुछ सही कर जाऊं. तुम्हारा पापा.
Powerful stuff, eh?
Let's have a look at the case study.
Household chores in India are mostly done by women. Even after a tiring day at work, women do all the work at home. Statistics have revealed that 73% of married Indian women feel that a man prioritizes relaxing over helping with household chores. More than 2/3 of Indian women feel the inequality at home between men and women. So to address this inequality, Ariel India launched a movement, Share the Load, an effort to get more men to help with laundry and other household chores. We started with digital, the most engaging, powerful and conversational medium. It all started with the question, is laundry only a woman's job? With powerful statistics, Ariel sparked off a debate and got people thinking. This instantly became a talking point on social media. The engagement rate on Facebook tripled and the conversation increased 5-fold on Twitter, resulting in national trends. But the debate needed direction. Ariel had a solution to the problem that was on everyone's mind. The objective was to get the country to share the load with Ariel, as it gets the best stain removal in one wash no matter who does the laundry. Men started joining the movement and sharing their experiences. To increase the engagement, Ariel created the Wash Bucket Challenge to spread the message and get even more men involved from different walks of life. The press, bloggers, and celebrities showed their support too, in turn further increasing the conversation by 15 times. However, it didn't just end there. Ariel reached out to more Indian men through their favorite sport, cricket, by collaborating with the Rajasthan Royals players who pledged to share the load via an exclusive digital video to show men that laundry can be fun too. All these efforts resulted in more than 1.5 million men joining the movement and demonstrating their support to share the load. Over 20 million impressions via hashtags, tweets, and celebrities were generated, along with more than 449,000 plus interactions on Facebook, 2.7 million video views, and 55 million plus impressions, leading to a staggering increase of 60% in sales as well. India has pledged to share the load. Have you?
This is an evolving conversation. So this is how they started. So the conversation keeps growing. So they've done conversations around sons sharing the load, meaning when you have a son and a daughter, you tend to teach your daughter all these things around the house, but not your son. But it's about the mom taking the initiative to teach these basic life skills, to your son. Then there's another conversation about how, in a household, the couple, there's inequality in sleep because the woman obviously spends more time doing all these things and she's losing out on time to sleep. So the conversation keeps growing with Share the Load. And that's the beauty of that purpose platform they've chosen.
Inspiring stuff. I mean, you could see with Lifebuoy it had to do with hygiene and hand wash. And you can see with Ariel it's about a mindset. But it's all purpose driven because at the end of the day, it actually involves change. Changing something in society which people feel are not the right things that's happening. And a brand's taking ownership of making that change happen.
So this next one I chose because when I was going through the list of participants, I saw there were so many friends from the banking industry. So I thought, hey, can a bank do purpose? And then, yeah, they can. So I found this example of Bank of the West in the US. What they've done. What they found was that they weren't differentiated from their competition. So then they researched to see what could be a possible premise for them. And what they found out was there was no bank which really thrived on this opportunity and took hold of this sustainability platform. And they felt this is something that they would like to explore because, like Santosh was talking about the consumer valued these things about the environment, climate change, sustainability. So they felt, okay, the consumer needs it, and right now there's no competitor bank which takes this platform, and responsible financing would be a very good platform to do a purpose-driven campaign. So what they did was, when they looked into all their portfolios, etc., they found that they weren't financing projects like fracking or Arctic drilling or anything that would, like big tobacco, anything that was harmful to the planet. And they felt this would be a great platform to do their positioning, to do their brand purpose. So when they thought of the consumer, what they realized was, even though sustainability was important to the consumer, and they were looking at their supply chain to understand what their carbon footprint was, they weren't really thinking of their bank as part of the supply chain. So Bank of the West wanted to change that conversation, get consumers to ask, what on earth was their bank financing? Where was the money that they were putting into the banks going into? So I want to show you one video, then we'll...
What do you know about banks?
Not a lot, to be honest.
I don't know much about banking. What does the bank do with your money?
I haven't the foggiest idea.
I don't know.
I think they make money by... I don't even know, honestly.
I'm sure they invest it.
They invest it in what they think is going to make money.
So I'm going to list off some things that banks finance. You give me your reaction, okay? Small business loans.
Yeah, that seems like a good thing.
Construction projects.
Yeah, that's our bread and butter right there.
Solar panels.
That's alternative energy. I'm okay with that.
Arctic oil drilling.
No.
Oh dear,
Fracking?
No!
I'm not all right with that.
Even by proxy, I wouldn't want to be connected.
Tar sands oil?
Oh!
You want to know some of the things your bank's invested in?
I don't know if I do or not.
How much money do you think your bank has invested in fracking in the last 3 years?
15 million.
Well, 29 billion.
Holy Holy You kidding?
Well, what if I told you your bank was involved in all this?
I think I would switch.
How does that leave you feeling?
It makes me feel good that I'm as poor as I am because I'm only giving them a little bit.
I feel a little ignorant for not asking my bank, what do you invest my money in?
I have a choice to change and look for a more responsible institution.
If there was a bank that reflected your values, how would you feel about that?
Great. Somebody's getting conscious. Who is it?
I'd move my money.
But I went with Wells Fargo because it's closest to my house. But, I mean, I wouldn't mind driving an extra quarter mile to the Bank of the West.
If Bank of the West cares about the environment, then they're a bank that I would want to be a part of.
Money is power, so like having it represent things that I care about, that's really important to me.
So it wasn't just, lip service. They actually connected it to one of their products. They introduced the world's first checking account designed for climate change action. So there was a carbon tracking tool which was linked to their card, which would track all the purchases that you would do with it and the carbon footprint of all your purchases. The debit card was made out of 100% biodegradable plastics. And also, the bank would donate 1% of the revenue they would make on these accounts into 1% for the planet, which is a collaboration of 4 such environmental organizations. So they really lived their commitment. Yeah?
So, what are the key learnings? And this is important, right? Because you've seen 3 cases. You've seen Lifebuoy, you've seen Ariel, and you've seen
Bank of the West.
Bank of the West. So for me, the key learning from Lifebuoy, and this is a period, this is a time where all of us need to think about the brands that we manage, that we are custodians of, and to think about which one connects the best to our brand. And this is why I think it's important to summarize some of the learnings. So let's go back to some of the things we talked about. We talked about why brand purpose is such a big deal. Because your consumer who's likely to be your loyalist, and loyal consumers are important for brands. The consumer who's likely to be your loyalist really cares about some of the big things that's happening around the world. So the important thing is to understand if your brand is really linking up to a purpose in a very clear, sincere way, which it can promise, that actually persuades consumers to stay loyal to your brand versus some other brand. So in the context of Lifebuoy, what Lifebuoy did really well is they linked their soap to hygiene in a way that's relevant to the world, and did this amazing thing. They went from village to village, helping kids to reach the age of 5. And that's a very demonstrable, clear change action, and that's very clear how they put it to work. But the real story here is also the link to hand washing. Because when you connect hand washing to hygiene, you're directly propagating sale. And that's a great way in which they linked the brand to a purpose and made it really work for them. And I all of you, if you go back and do a Google on Lifebuoy, you'll see that whole hand washing story related to hygiene has been the reason why during the pandemic, Lifebuoy sales have just gone through the roof. Ariel brought about social change that matters by challenging old entrenched attitudes. Why should women do all the housework? And then connected it with the key consumer of theirs, who is a woman, in a very relevant, insightful manner, because most women started loving Ariel. This is a great case of a brand in India where Surf was number 1, and Ariel came with this campaign and actually took back share. Yeah, so the connect to product use is getting husbands to at least do the laundry. And I'm sure many husbands in India have started washing clothes. This is fantastic news, right? Can't get better than that.
Yeah, I think with Bank of the West, what they did, the key learning there is actually how they showed real commitment to climate action change. right? And it's not just making a statement or taking a stand. They were actually linking it back to one of their products when they introduced this world's first check-in account to fight climate change. And this was laddering up to their purpose, as well as it was changing behavior of the consumers to how they would look at banking as well. Yeah.
So yeah, I think this kind of summarizes our presentation. But we are more than happy to take questions from any of you in this on this topic of brand purpose. So we are all yours to shoot.
Such a wrong word.
So I'll go first, Santosh. I think thanks, Santosh and Chanithi. It's a great session. I think the way that you staged, like you sort of proposing that how important having the brand purpose, and then you sort of saying the contradictory views under that. I mean, that really played out really well. So I think, this might not be a question, but just would like to hear some comments from you. Before that, I'm Prasad Magam. I'm representing GSK Pharmaceuticals. And the question that I was thinking to myself when I looked at this slide here was that, of course, like, how do we combine the overall value proposition into the brand purpose? Because I was thinking to myself, let's say, if you're doing this advertisement for a product that you have charged a premium price, of course it could backfire, right? Because you're talking about the hand sanitization, and you're trying to sort of portray the situation in a village, and you're trying to build that narrative. But then if your product is priced at a very premium price, then I think those two sort of doesn't link together. So I was just thinking that if you are going to go with a bigger purpose, and if you are trying to portray you as a corporate as a brand that live up to create a good society, then your overall value proposition has to back things up, right? So that's my thinking. I just want to hear your comments on that.
Thank you so much for your kind words, first of all. And I think it's a fantastic question. And I think this is a big change again in Channa, I'm going to take this because he's talking about life buy. So first I have to take permission from Channa for these things, yeah, right? So I think this is a big change in the world. And I think the big change is that people are willing to pay money and premiums for brands which do good work. You know, I remember in the earlier days, we used to always think that the way to create value for a brand was by showing aspirational images and by putting up visuals which actually showed lifestyles of the rich and the famous. That was the way in which brands communicated and enhanced value. Today, that's not the way to do it. In today's world, if we are able to actually authentically and in a real way communicate the purpose that the brand is actually professing in a very convincing, honest way, consumers will pay more money. I loved the one that Channa put up, the example of Bank of West, where there was a man there in the film who said, you know, I chose a bank because it was close to my home, but if that bank actually is doing good work, I don't mind traveling half a mile more and going to that bank. And I thought that was a great demonstration and expression of why someone will actually do little extra work if they believe the bank bought into the values that they believed in. And I think this is a very good question and right time to ask the question, because the reason why consumers will pay in the new world, why consumers will pay the extra value or the extra amount for a brand and the premiums is because they think the brand professes the same values they do.
Yeah. And I think it's also, you need to look at that audience, the key audience that you're trying to communicate with, to understand what values are important to them. Because whilst, something might not appeal to them because it's in that premium segment, but that key audience that you're trying to target, they will have certain values which you need to understand, which you need to then link to your purpose.
Spot on.
Yeah.
Thank you, both of you, for presentation. Anyway, this question is related to the present context of Sri Lankan situation. We see a lot of PR statements coming out of Sri Lankan corporates, especially to we are with Sri Lankan people, etc., etc. But if you read them, most of them are shallow, vague statements without any purpose. But when I spoke about it, discussed with my colleagues, they were okay with that. They see there is a purpose in it, whereas if you dig deep, it is a very just a Me Too statement. So is there a takeaway on this, Santosh?
So tricky question, but I will still answer it. I think in the context of the presentation, so why am I here today? I'm here today to explain to you why brand purpose works. So let me address it in that context. What is very interesting about the current political situation is that there is a demand being made by the Gen Z and the millennials who are actually driving some of the things that's happening today in Sri Lanka, and the corporates are responding. I think that's the point that really needs to be noticed. I don't want to make a comment on the specific statements because, to be honest, I haven't really gone through it at depth. But what I do think is the fact that the corporates are actually putting out statements is testimony to the reason why brand purpose is a very, very important topic and why brand purpose is something that all brands must pursue. So I don't know if I've answered your question.
I also feel that this is something new for us. It's something new for our consumers, it's something new for our corporates. So maybe we are also still trying to find our footing to see, okay, is this right? Is this politically correct to say? Do we like this when brands say this? So this is pretty new to us as well, unlike maybe a more developed market like a US. But I'm sure this will evolve,
Yes.
It'll evolve.
Yes.
It'll be interesting to see how it evolves.
I mean, the fact that, people are out in the streets is quite surprising for a lot of people, right? And that's, again, indicative of a more evolved consumer. I mean, I'm connecting protesters to consumers, but that's who we are, right? I mean, they're all human beings.
No,
and they're
that's
responding,
our
they're
new
responding.
audience. That's our new audience.
Yeah, they're responding to change, and the change is everywhere. I mean, the point also is that for some people who might look at Sri Lanka and say, oh, these examples you showed were all of the West, and this is a change that's happening only in the West, and it's not really happening here, and show me an example. So I think maybe if there were many chairs full here today, somebody would have asked that question. So I want to take the bull by the horns today and tell you what's happening today in Sri Lanka is testimony to the fact that it's a global world. Young people are more aware. Young people won't take, okay, I won't use the word, but you know what I mean, right? Bleep, bleep, but yep.
Santosh, I have a question.
Sure.
Chanithi and Santosh. The first two examples that you brought about Amazon and Uber, you said there is a big negative impression with the consumers about the two brands. But then, how does those grow?
That's a very, very good question. Again, very good question. See, fact of the matter is, when you talk of brand purpose, you're talking loyalty. Okay? The reason we feel that brand purpose is important is in terms of loyalty. But fact also of the matter is that Uber and Amazon are amazing products in terms of the kind of value it provides, in terms of the kind of service it provides. It's fresh and it's new. So still people are adopting. So growth is not an issue. The real issue comes when you have competitors. When another brand comes into the market which actually professes values in a far more meaningful way is when the brands that don't suffer. Are you understanding what I'm saying? So yes, in the short to medium term, you might have a brand which has a great proposition and provides value for consumers who will do well. But all things remaining equal, if loyalty is the key component that's going to determine market share, then you will have in the long term, I don't think anybody can sustain without actually connecting to issues which matter to the world.
But then again, to build loyalty, you need to have a purpose.
Yes.
So, as you said, if there's a good competitor coming in, then they will be.
Yeah.
Exactly.
See, sometimes from a consumer perspective, there's no alternative. You take in Sri Lanka, if you take the telecom industry, for example, we all feel that we're with one telco because we don't have a choice. because nobody else is able to match up to it. So I feel it's a lot to do with that as well.
Yeah, I mean, the question to ask, if there's number portability, what happens? And that's the true test for a brand, right? I mean, once number portability comes, then what happens to loyalty? And if a big brand has actually ignored purpose, then the day of reckoning comes when all things become equal. And let me tell you, in most markets, things become equal fairly fast. So as brand builders, you can't be thinking of the fact that you've had a great quarter or the fact that you had a great year. Brand builders have to think long term. Brand builders have to think about what happens if everything remains equal. And it will, sooner than you might know it. I've been in the business 25 years and I've handled categories across 3 countries. And I can tell you, I've handled some big players. The ones who've actually been always ahead of their time, thinking ahead, have always thrived. And these are the ones who've kept building brands from a long-term perspective, not ones who think about it from a quarter context. Of course, quarter context is important. Ultimately, many managers are given promotions based on performances in 6 months and 1 year, which is also an issue, to be honest, but that's the way the world is.
So in terms of Amazon and Uber, it's really not loyalty, but it's no choice.
More or less.
More or less.
In Sri Lanka, it's pick me, right? So, yes.
So now we've seen this, and we realize as a company we need to do something with this, and we want to work with it. What's going to be the next step? How do we discover our deep purpose?
Yes, I think the first thing to do, Bob, is to actually look at what is it that your product or category can hook onto as a purpose in an authentic and a real way. It's not just about taking any purpose globally that exists and saying, okay, I'm in this business and I'm doing that purpose. If there's no link, you can't still connect it back to the brand. Which is why I think some of these examples were very good, because Lifebuoy connected to hand wash and to hygiene and then connected it beautifully to saving lives. And I think Ariel connected it to attitudes of women and then connected it back beautifully to usage of the product. So we got to really investigate the category you're in, the brand area that you're operating in, the things that really have meaning to your consumer, and then what's the purpose area that you can connect to there that actually will resonate with your consumers. Yeah. So I don't think there's any straight ABCD answer. In each case, you have to spend time investigating how you can get there. It can be done, but it's a process. You have to go through, a fair.
There's quite a bit of homework to be done.
Yes.
Looking into your own brand, what you're good at, your unique strengths, as well as out of that, what are you proud of? What do you want to be seen as? What do you want to be? What are the problems you want to be seen as solving? And then does it really matter to this consumer or the audience or your stakeholders? So it's a process, but there is a framework to it.
And you can do it. I mean, I have worked with big brands, and I have to tell you, it's not easy, because very often there are many points of views, because there's a lot of confusion with regards to what is CSR. People will say, yeah. So I've had conversations with some of people I worked with in the past who will say, yeah, we are doing CSR. We have a lot of money we are spending. Come, I'll show you. You understand the point, right? So then the conversation starts, okay, this is great. You guys are doing some amazing work. It's CSR. How are we going to connect it back to the brand? And then the question marks come up saying, okay, can we sustain it? Is it going to sell our product? And then you don't have enough people with conviction. The fundamental thing is conviction, and the conviction has to come from the top. You might have a really bold brand manager, but if you don't have a CEO who really understands the context, he might not even understand what the brand manager is talking about. I mean, if I have to cut to the brass tacks, that's what it's all about. It's about a leadership who really understands the context for purpose and then drives purpose as a leader. I think one of the reasons why some of the big corporates do a great job is because they have leaders who've really understood the larger perspective of the changing consumer. if the leadership understands the context of the changing consumer and understands that the only way to get loyalty is by building purpose into, brand in a long-term sustainable manner, it'll happen. And but the other answer is, come to us, Bob, we'll show you how to do it. Yeah, I mean, I don't want to say it directly, but I'll say it to you.
Hi, Santosh, Chanithi. Just a question from my end. Building brand purpose, are you saying eliminates the loyalty index coming down? Or my question is, will brand purpose in any way enhance customer loyalty? Because customer loyalty, I mean, being a marketer, I don't see customers being loyal continuously. It is contextual.
Yes.
We see it happening even in the current context. So are we saying that by building a purpose to your brand, you're enhancing the loyalty index? Is there a correlation? Or?
Yes. Nilmani, right?
Yes.
I wasn't sure with your mask, but I think I figured out you were sitting next to Varuni. Yes. Nilmi, absolutely. I think, but one of the things is that your product experience and the delivery of the product in the category must fulfill the fundamentals of the category first. I mean, you can't go onto a purpose platform if your product's not delivering. But all things remaining equal, if you're also on a purpose platform and you're targeting the Gen Z and the millennials and you're looking at that in a long-term context, your brand is, I would say, based on whatever I have seen so far internationally, it has a better chance of success than others. So I have to be very careful with my words. I don't think the answer is a yes or no answer. It's a, it's a yes, it could work if all things are worked out, is what my answer would be.
Hi Santosh, I'm Roshan and I'm from GSK.
Hi, Roshan.
So I do also have like to connect it with Prasad's question on premium pricing.
Yes.
So when it comes to brand marketing. So coming back to your presentation on Lifeboat, right, the cost, right, when it's premium set price, will the end consumers, like as Chanithi correctly said, we are targeting the targeted group. So will the cost be spread around? Will every consumer be able to afford it? Is one. Second thing, will it make sense with the cost?
Yes. So I think it depends on the category, it depends on the consumer, it depends on the brand, and it depends on what is the overall proposition. See, I don't think a cause can ever take the place of the category. I mean, if I were to give you an example, if you were to talk about a product category in a shampoo space, and you're not offering a premium product experience, and then you're getting onto a cause, chances are that it's not going to fly. You still need to deliver the premiumness that your product gives you. But if beyond that, if you're in a cost space and if you've taken on to something that actually makes a difference, then compared to other brands in that premium segment, there'll be more loyal customers for you than for the other brand. I mean, that's the theoretical perspective on how it works. But we'll have to take it case by case. I'll have to sit with you and look at what specific thing you have in your mind and maybe give you an answer in the context of that category, in that brand, in the context of the premium space that you're talking about. But I don't know if I'm clear in my answer. And if I'm not, please do point it out. Chanithi normally does so.
Yeah.
Right?
Paint me as.
You want to add something to that, Chana?
No, I think you covered it, Santosh.
So maybe one last question. Like, of course, part of the campaign, some of the campaigns that you have shown, it's really sort of succeeded, but some of those campaigns have not worked. It has backfired.
Yes.
So I'm trying to figure out the difference because
Yes.
of course these are big companies. They must have done their research before they launch these campaigns, of course, right? So the question is, I mean, are we narrowing down to they're not being genuine enough, or whether they're not being authentic enough, or is there more to it? Why they have gone wrong? If they've gone wrong, why do you think? if we are, so let's say as a company, if we are trying, doing or figuring out our own purpose, then pitfalls that we need to be sort of be mindful on a sort of high level.
High level, I would say, first, I would say don't mess with politics. Now brands are taking a stand on many issues, and that's a positive thing to do. But equally, you need to be careful what kind of stances you're taking and what kind of spaces you're taking. I mean, while I'm saying that, I'm also mindful of the fact that in the US, many brands are taking sides and saying, we believe in this viewpoint, we don't believe in that viewpoint. We have to be careful when we do that in this part of the world, because the nuances are not black and white, and I literally mean that, right? I think in our part of the world, there's a lot of grays, and we need to be careful and mindful of those. That's a big picture. Second thing is, reality is, retrospective knowledge is always 90-90, right? I mean, it's like, you always feel perfect knowledge. We all are clear, why it didn't work, we are very sure of. But how to make sure it's 100% is always a tougher job. But I think it will always have to be specific to the case, and we'll have to look at it in that context. But what about the learnings from MasterCard and Pepsi? I can say, yes, it seems to be in hindsight that MasterCard seemed to be exploitative by asking people to, every time Neymar scored a goal, we are going to give away 10,000, we're going to give away money to the hungry people. Seemed very exploitative. And, Pepsi trying to make capital of the BLM movement didn't really go well with the target consumer.
And I think very, very specifically with Pepsi, using a white woman, handing a can of Pepsi to a cop, specific visuals like that really backfired, because that was the basis for the BLM movement, So those specific visuals also triggered, I felt. And also sometimes what happens with purpose is, I've noticed a lot, where the brand, the tone of voice becomes very preachy. Oh, as a brand, we're telling you, you must do this. And they might not really be actioning anything, just a preachy message. And that also tends to backfire on them.
I can see questions in the ladies' minds there, but I think no one's articulating it. Please ask.
I just want to understand that since all the examples were of the consumers, which are day-to-day activities, if the consumers are limited, so how we can set a brand value for that particular company or organization? Say, for example, I have an IT solution and my consumers are like a shop people or a clothing stores and all those kind of others. So my consumers are very limited. So how can I create a brand for my solution over there?
It's an entire brief.
Yes, I think.
So I just want to understand the concept of your circle, that why, what, and that.
Yes.
Is this applicable in this scenario, or it will be a totally different?
No, I think it could be applicable, but we'll obviously need to look more in depth into what you're specifically referring to. I don't think the golden circle works only for large brands.
Yeah, no, just to add in. So, actually, the golden circle aside, the purpose is relevant to anyone. So there's this one case, I was actually talking to Santosh about it, a law firm, actually a lawyer from Canada, right? So he's worked in the big top corporate law companies and blah, blah, really high-flying career, all that. And then on his downtime, he will help out and do pro bono work just to feel good. But then he always missed the bigger picture, like, is this all my life is? Like, I'm going to be doing this corporate thing, killing it in the corporate life and then doing this in my spare time. Why can't I marry these two? And he started his own law firm. And what he did was, because he was missing this purpose, so what he did was he actually, his concept was 1 for 1. So each 1 hour of work, paid work he does, he would do pro bono work. And this became a really great inspiration for all people who wanted to join his organization as well. So, and that was a small company, and it's a very specific service kind of thing. But then that's how he found it. So if we spend enough time, I'm sure you too will be able to ask the right questions, which kind of,
but also I'm a fantastic example of this lawyer, I think, from Chana. But also, let me add one thing. In the startup world, every concept can actually change the world. I mean, the ones that succeed, right? So when you say IT solution, I'm also thinking if it's in a space which is related to digital technology, something that can solve problems for people who don't even know they have a problem sometimes.
Yeah.
I mean, then that can have huge implications in terms of, but the way you articulate it, the way you actually are able to sell it, actually makes a big difference, right? I mean, I don't know whether that's the kind of concept you're talking about, but I think those are kind of spaces which are huge, have got huge potential. And today's Gen Z and millennials are really in that space. They don't want to be working for somebody. They want to be creating their own concepts and going out there and making that work in as large a way as possible. And and if you're in Sri Lanka, and I think unicorns are most welcome. I mean, Sri Lanka needs unicorns more than anybody at this point in time. 8 unicorns would solve the debt problem. Of course, getting those 8 numbers are not easy, but.
Thank you.
Any other questions? We are happy to take as many.
We can. It's okay. We'll be chit-chatting and we can.
Yeah, maybe then we can just continue the chat while we're having the refreshments.
I think.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay,
thank you guys. Fantastic.
I'd now like to invite again Ms. Tamali Abeyratna to do a brief introduction on how to join an exclusive community of elite leaders and gain visibility at the global stage from the vast experience through CGMA, Chartered Global Management Accountant designation through the CIMA fast track routes that are available for corporate professionals.
I will take quick 10 minutes to quickly introduce you to CIMA fast track routes because we have an audience of corporate professionals and this might add value to your career. Of course, this doesn't apply to CIMA members if you're a CIMA member because the first point of the eligibility criteria is that you cannot have had sat for any CIMA exams before. The first pathway is called C-Suite Business and Finance Program. This program is designed for C-level professionals if you are a CEO, CFO, or a company director. And you have 15 years of overall experience, of which 5 years in strategic management, then you can apply for this program. But just because you apply for the program, you don't get selected. You have to go through an assessment process for which you have to send us the application form, your updated CV, and if you have any other professional or academic qualifications, all these documents will be assessed and evaluated and see, they will check what kind of areas of the CIMA professional qualification that you have covered with your corporate experience, and according to that, give you the exemptions. So if you're selected for this program, you can go directly to the strategic case study, which is the final case study exam of the qualification. I will go more into the qualification later for those of you who are not familiar with CIMA qualification. So the next one is CGMA Senior Executive Program. This is for senior managers, or if you're a head of department, head of marketing, head of finance, or senior manager operations, those are the most common designations that we get applications from. So if you have 6 years of overall experience, of which 3 years in middle to senior management capacity, you can apply for these exemptions under CGMA Senior Executive Program. And if you're selected for this program, you only have to sit for the 2 case studies. Management case study is the 3rd stage case study exam, and strategic case study is the final case study exam. I will take you through the journey when you say you are selected for this program, and then you register as a fast track route candidate. And then we connect you with our registered tuition providers. Each case study is based on a pre-seen material. Pre-screen material is a 25-page document giving you all the details about a particular company, financials, industry background, everything. So for these 6 weeks, you will be studying this studying this case study and preparing yourself for the exam. And the lecturers will guide you in terms of how to map the answers and what kind of theory areas that you need to apply into your answers. All of that will be taught. And you'll be going through mock exams as well, which looks similar to the final exam. So, you kind of prepare yourself and you get individual feedback. So every time you do a mock exam, you improve yourself and then prepare for the exam at the end of 6 weeks. This is the qualification structure. CIMA has 4 stages and 16 exams. Every stage has 4 exams. So a standard route student, if you are studying CIMA from the beginning, you have to go through all 16 exams. Now, if you're wondering if I'm going to get the relevant knowledge when you go through, fast track routes, the rationale behind it is if you're 16 years and or above, you can start CIMA by doing all these 16 exams. But if you're already in senior manager level or C level, you've learned a lot on the job. And along the way, you might have collected, studied your academic qualifications, professional qualifications. So you've covered some of these areas already. So it doesn't make sense for you to go back and do certificate level studies and, go up again. And mainly in senior manager level, you need to make decisions, right? So this is the rationale behind the fast track routes and exemptions. I've included some familiar faces from the corporate world. I've purposely included some of the faces of our CIMA members who have gone through fast track routes because they're not from finance background. So today's audience, we don't really have finance professionals. We mainly have marketing, strategy, branding professionals. So you don't necessarily have to be from a finance background because CIMA has moved from being an accounting qualification to business qualification. Now we cover all aspects of the business, including digital. So yeah, I'm just clearing your doubts. So, if you're in a senior manager level, obviously one of the perks of getting CIMA qualified is to go to the next level, C level. So, that is an obvious perk. But if you're already a CEO or in C level, then you might be wondering, why do I need CIMA? That's why we say CIMA is not just a qualification or a certificate that you obtain. It's a continuous professional development for the rest of your professional career. Now, Kishnika actually arranges a lot of programs, forums. We'll share a lot of other resources with our members to make sure that our members are up to date with all the business world changes. So when you say you're a CIMA member, it's self-explanatory that you are up to date with all the business world changes. And of course, you get the opportunity to connect with like-minded, futuristic, innovative professionals globally. So that is why we say CIMA, being CIMA qualified is not just a qualification, it's a journey. And for today's participants, we have a special offer. We are, like I said now, you have to send your documents for the screening to get your eligibility checked for to apply for exemptions. So if you send your CV to us before 10th of May, we are offering Digital Mindset Pack for free. Now, Digital Mindset Pack is a 6-hour online course. CIMA has our own portal called CGMA Store, where you can find thousands of programs, not just in financial topics, all fields, a lot of range of topics. So it can be a video, podcast, like online course. It's very modern type of learning. So usually you have to purchase this, and then you can go through the learning, and then you get a certificate or digital badge once you complete it. So for today's participants, for the first 30 people who send us your CV before 10th of May, will get free access to this. I've listed down some of the learning outcomes. I hope you can see that. If not, you can talk to me later. So that's about it. I hope I was fast enough. If you need any more details about CIMA, our products, or Digital Mindset Pack, please contact my colleague Keith or myself, or the CIMA team will be available at the refreshments. Enjoy the rest of your evening, and sorry to keep you waiting.
Thank you, Tamali. Before we conclude, I'd like to thank all of you for being here today. Santosh, Chanithi, and the team from FCBKL.LK, the team from CIMA, Event Management Promo Watch, and Cinnamon Grand. Have a good evening, everyone.